Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Networking Mondays. Oh boy, I got too many of these to think about. It's Networking Monday. Very glad you're with us. It's April 5th, 2021. As throughout our presentation, as soon as you think of a question, please just use the chat box to enter your question. If you're on Zoom, and for those people watching on Facebook right now, we've got a bunch of people watching on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. And I'm monitoring that feed, and I'll be sure to get those questions answered or get the questions asked to our speaker. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you happen to post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comment, name, and picture to appear. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started careerdfw.org, a website to help those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in their job search by trying to put everything in one place to make it easy for them. In 2012, I started careerusa.org after being invited to go to the White House and finding out that there really wasn't another website like Career DFW. And I don't think, as far as I know, there still is not another website like Career DFW in the country. So I started careerusa.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you may not know. It's available on Amazon. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Well, each week we have a different speaker talking about networking. There's a lot of different points of view, and just over the years of me doing this, as long as I've been doing this, I've gotten to meet a lot of people who talk who have a great angle and a great suggestion on how you should network and why you should network. So today our speaker is Mark McDonald. He's the facilitator of the practice interview team, which is the PIT crew, which meets currently they meet virtually, and I'm sure Mark will tell us all about that in just a second. So today his talk is about networking with a purpose. So Mark, thank you very much for being here, and it's all yours.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screen. You guys got that now?
We do, thank you.
I've got the presentation, the chat window. I got a few people here. Let me get things rearranged and see if I can. Oh, that's not gonna work. All right, well, thank you, Jeff, for inviting me to speak today. I have a different perspective. I'm not really gonna talk that much about the actual networking. I'm gonna talk to the motivation behind networking. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I had a long career in the high-tech electronics industry in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And high-tech electronics for me meant products that the phone companies like AT&T and Verizon use to provide service to you at your home or you at your business. So that kind of electronics, and our customers were the phone companies. They installed it in their offices, and maybe a piece of it went in your home or went in your business. And there you got data connectivity. It was a great career up until the early 2000s, that recession, 2001, 2002 timeframe, and also the WorldCom and MCI both went out of business in a pretty close amount of time. So that started the decline in the industry, and it actually continues to decline today. So that was the first time I got laid off, and then I got laid off twice more, 2007 and 2012. So this is what I bring to the networking and job search environment is my personal experience being laid off 3 times. And 2 of the times I got back pretty quickly. The third time took quite a bit longer. And in fact, I never did get back into telecommunications. I took a bridge job, and then I officially retired in May of 2018. So in 2013, shortly after that third time I got laid off, I became a volunteer for the PIT crew. And then a year later, I assumed leadership. The PIT crew's been around since 2008. Jeff knows for sure, but I think that's correct, 2008. and I took over leadership in 2014. And we meet on, we used to meet on Wednesday afternoons. This is the old-fashioned business card. Haven't had one of those out in a year. But we used to meet at Christ United Methodist Church, and we're hoping to get back there maybe in the fall or the end of the summer. And so we give practice interviews, and the we part of the pit crew is a group of volunteers that have all been hiring managers, and most of them are in job transition, just like you. And so they're the ones that give the interviews, and because they're volunteers, these interviews are free, and they're based on they're very personalized and customized based on a job description and your resume. And then we hold them using Zoom. So now we hold them any day of the week. They take about 45 minutes for the interview and 30 or so minutes for the debrief afterwards. So an hour and a half would cover it if you want to reserve a time slot. And so all you have to do if you want to have a practice interview is send your information to me at dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and I'll go to work setting it up. It takes a couple of days, and we'll get your schedule lined up with 3 volunteers, and we'll give you a panel interview. It'll be recorded. You'll get to look at that afterwards. And of course, you get the feedback and the suggestions from the interview team about things you did well and things you could do better. So that's the pit crew. Now, when the pit crew used to meet face-to-face, at the end of every session, we'd have a little education time, and we'd talk about the interviews that occurred that day and any questions that the attendees had. And there'd be 40 people there typically, sometimes even 50. And so it was a very interactive discussion, and we covered a lot of topics. And we just talked about whatever people were interested in talking about that day. We often talked about star stories and often talked about negotiating salaries, but whatever people wanted to hear about, we talked about. When we stopped meeting face-to-face, then Jeff started promoting his different days of the week for different things. So now we have networking on Monday, and Tuesday we have LinkedIn, and Wednesday we have interviewing. And so that's the webinar that Walt Glass and Walt Glass is a career coach and an interview coach. So we put together a series of 13 lessons all about interviewing and a little bit about networking and a little bit about video interviewing. So I'm going to talk to you about the part that's in the 13 session series, my part about networking. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, and it's based on the experience from the pit crew. Now, Jeff, you know, when we usually suggest that you put any questions you might have in the chat box, but I'm going to suggest that I think we'll have plenty of time. So if you just want to raise your hand and ask a question whenever it occurs to you, I think we can support that. Jeff may have to let me know if someone's raised their hand, or you can put it in the chat window, either way. Let me do this before I go on. There's my contact information. You can also link in with me, just send a note and say, I saw you speak on Networking Monday, and let's join our networks, and that's good enough for me. I'll add you to my network. That's going to help you with what we're going to talk about today. It's networking. And finally, you know, if this is your first time to one of Jeff's meetings, if you're brand new, you know, the last few weeks you've gone into the job search, please put your information in the chat window. And for those of us who've been in job search a little bit longer, I encourage you to reach out to those new people. You know, we just can't network like we used to when we were meeting face to face. So I think this will be a good substitute where the people with experience, you know, unfortunately, you know, still looking, can help new people as they come in, but you have to know who they are. So please identify yourself as a newbie, and that'll be a good thing. And we'll get some people to reach out to you. And of course, we'll know that you're early in your job search as well. And of course, we're all about, all of these things that Jeff puts together is all about shortening that time that you're in job search and getting you back to work. That's one way, is to put your name in the chat window. Okay, keep going. There we go. Networking with purpose, networking with a purpose. That's what we're going to talk about today, as opposed to just networking without any idea why you're doing it. And so a little bit of the background here, I been doing this 8 years now, and everybody knows, and it's true that like 80% of jobs are found through networking of some sort. Yet people still don't network, and I have pondered why that is. And so one of the things I came up with is people just don't kind of understand how valuable it is. I know can be a painful thing, and if you're not used to networking, it can be uncomfortable, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask a couple of questions here in a second. But still, it's so tremendously valuable. So I thought I'd try to capture all the ways that networking can help you and assist you in finding jobs and doing better in your interviewing. And it involves informational interviews. So we're going to talk about that. That's what we're going to talk about. If you have questions, I just mentioned that. Go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll pause for a moment, or you can put them in the chat window either way. Okay, now let's audience participation time. How many times a day, how many days per week do you spend applying online or searching for jobs online?
For those people on Facebook, you can just put your question, just put your answer right into the comment field.
There we go. Mark Heller just landed. How about that? Congratulations. All right, we've only got 19 out of 31. Let's run that number up a little bit more. Got a D online. All right, let's cut it off right there, Jeff. And so yeah, so if you do 3, 4, or 5 days, that's like 52%, right? So about half of you are 3 or more days, and that means the other half are 3 or less, I guess. So 3 overlaps, but if we just do 1 or 2 days, that's about 25%, okay. 25% about 3 days, and then about 50% 3 days or more, okay. So a lot of people, this is what they do, and it seems productive. And you can find things that look interesting. You can learn what's going on in the marketplace. Let's go on to the next one. Let me shut this down. And the next poll is, how many days a week do you spend networking? So we've got 25% of you spending 1 or 2 days online, and 50% spending 3, 4, or 5 days online. How about networking? Okay, well, let's just, so now we look here, and we can just keep it running, Jeff, till it hits a minute. So here we've got 3, 4, or 5 days is about 52%. So 3, 4, or 5 days. So so those of you who are spending 50% of your time online are spending the other 50% of your time networking. That's good. And let's see, 20%, just a couple of 1 or 2 days would be 20%. Let's say 3 days is about 25%. So it seems very similar to what we put in about applying online. probably not the same people doing it, but okay, there we go. So now I don't have a poll on this, but I want you to just put into the chat window, the reasons why, if you're one of those kind of low networkers on the low end of networking, is why you don't network more. And it can be as simple as, it's intimidating, or you don't find it productive. But put down the reason: you don't know how, you don't know what words to say, you're afraid people won't call you back, or they'll be mean to you on the phone. So networking and job searching, okay, that's Michelle. And then you're working on school, so you're going to school. Yeah, I see no results. Contact 25 people and no response. There you go. Greg. Yep, few people talk about you don't know how to do it. Okay, so working full time and don't really have time to network. Yes, that's when you take a bridge job, you still have to look for work and work. So it's hard to network in that situation. It feels awkward, yes. You can't ask for a job, yes. Yeah, that is the worst, working while looking. That's tough. Yes, lack of confidence, lack of time, want to discuss present. Or discuss or present, I see. Something of interest, want to do more than ask for a job. All right, thank you. You need to have some example emails for different situations. All right, well, let me get into my slides. Thank you for that information, guys. And here it is, one big slide, all done. So when I first did this presentation, which was probably about a year ago, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, I had this one big slide and it was one big build. So I just started with the circle that's in the middle and then started adding stuff. And so that was pretty busy, as you can see. But I'm going to start off with this just to set the stage, and then we're going to analyze each part. And first of all, it is a virtuous circle. So networking is a virtuous circle. It's going to help you find a job, and the first time around it may not, but if you keep going, it's going to shorten your job search. Okay, so that's what you see there. And you are the car driver and the green car there, and we're going to travel around that circle. Your goal is to find a new job and pick up the finish line checkered flag at the end. And along the way, we're going to talk about the difference between connections, or the difference between contacts and connections, and champions and supporters. The use of informational interviews, not exactly how to do them, but how to use them, and get access to the hidden job market, to gain information and insight that other candidates may not have, and to seek advice and feedback. We're going to talk about what happens when a job appears and it's one of your target companies and you've got a contact inside the company, how that can be of benefit to you. We're going to talk about how to avoid the ATS black hole. You see there at the kind of 4 o'clock position, I've got some stats that I want to share with you that you probably heard before, but I've done some work trying to rationalize them in my mind. We're going to talk about how all this networking makes your interviews more effective, and then back to the start, which is now the finish. So you're landing sooner, you start your new job. And you can continue to network like this even after you've started your new job. Okay, so here's some of the basics. And I know you guys come to this session to learn how to network. I'm going to really talk about just what I said there is the motivation behind network and the benefits of networking, and not so much directly about networking. A lot of Jeff's got some recordings online. You can mention those at the end if you want to go, if you want to really find out something today, you can go look at some of the recordings on his Career USA channel. So, what is networking? Well, networking in this context is, telling people you're in the job search. Okay, so you may meet somebody at the grocery store, you may be talking to your neighbor at church. Okay, so part of the principles of networking is you don't know who knows who. You just don't know. You've probably heard the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon that everyone is 6 degrees away from anyone else in the world. So the idea here is if you ask six people, you'd find if you were looking. So let's say you're looking for John Smith III. If you started asking around of anyone who knew John Smith, within 6 steps, you'd find someone who did. You might even find John Smith. So this is the idea, is that you have to mention things to people about that you're in your job search. Make an ask, and that will lead you, to where you want to go. Now, that assumes you know where you want to go, and so we're going to talk about knowing a little more, other than just saying, I'm looking for work. I know I'm a senior project manager, and here's some of the things I've done in the past. That's a very complicated way to network, and it has its place like that. If you're going to an industry setting where a lot of people who have a background like you have will be there, or work in the same industry that you work in, then you can get into a conversation, a work-related conversation. Okay. But most of the time, you're going to be meeting people who are just finding out that you're out of work and don't really know what you did anyway. I mean, they want to share some sympathy, but how do you get them to help you? Now, so you're going to meet somebody, you're going to tell them that you're out of work, and here's what you're going to ask them to provide you. You're going to say, do you know somebody, or maybe you know someone who knows someone who works at blank, works at a company. You're going to name a company. Okay. So that's a very simple ask, and you can ask that to anyone you meet. Okay. Now we're going to come back to this. How do you know this? The names of the companies you provide are off your target list. But the important thing to know about kind of general wide scale networking, let's call this wide scale networking as opposed to targeted networking, is that you need to have a very simple ask. People aren't going to remember what you did. They're not going to remember all those things you told them about your successes. They will remember a very simple thing, like he was looking for somebody who works at NTT or Toyota. Now they can go to work for you. They can ask their friends, their kids' parents. So that's a very simple thing. So that's one thing to know, is that you want to make a very simple networking ask. Now, you're going to meet a lot of people. Some of them know you, some of them don't. Okay, you're casting your net pretty wide, and we call those people contacts. Okay, those are just contacts. For instance, I've invited a lot of people to join my LinkedIn network. And I do that mainly because they can get some value from other people that are in my network. But a lot of them I don't know very well. I may not know at all. So they're contacts. They're just contacts. Very straightforward. Okay, we'll come back to this, Charlotte, this question you have. So that's a contact. Now, if you do have something in common with these people, so let's say they go to your church, or they're your next door neighbor and they know you pretty well. But it can be, you might be a tennis player, and so it might be your tennis group, or really it can come from any activity, your children's athletics, whatever your children are involved in, those parents. People that you have something in common with, and they have something in common with you have a shared connection, can become much, much more than just a contact. And I think if you have a contact, you can expect the kind of success that somebody mentioned, that Greg Basir mentioned. I think you made 25 calls and you didn't get any responses. So this is the kind of what happens when people who don't know you well, but again, you still pursue those people because you just don't know who they know, and you're only asking them to do something very straightforward and simple, is to give you a name. Okay, give you a name, and then you can take it from there. So contacts have a very low conversion rate, let's say, but that's kind of the way that it is. I mean, when I was a sales guy for a couple of years, they told me I needed to make 25 contacts to get one lead, so to speak, someone who would talk to me more than, just a perfunctory conversation. Okay. And then I had to get 5 leads before I had an opportunity to close a deal. Okay. So I had to talk to 125 people who, funneled down into 25 conversations, 1, 2, or 3, but somebody who's willing to talk to me on a regular basis to close one deal. Okay. So these are the kind of numbers you can expect. And that's not, that's a lot of phone calls to make. It's not a whole lot of work. I mean, most of the phone calls were pretty perfunctory. And that's the way it goes kind of in the networking world when you're networking, cold networking. Okay. Let's call that cold networking. That's cold calling. Now, these weren't exactly cold calls that I was doing, maybe a little bit warmer, but those are the kind of numbers you can expect. Now, if you have something in common with people, then they may be much more invested because they know you well, or you have something in common with them to help you out. Okay. And so they become supporters. Or connections. And so there's kind of different levels here, right? So they go from being a contact to a connection to a supporter, and maybe, eventually a champion, somebody who's really going to help you out, push you ahead, go the extra mile to see that you find another job. Okay. So that's what you do through all of this work of telling people that you're out of work and asking them for a name of a company. You're going to meet some people that you just click with, you build rapport with, you have a connection. And J.R. Better, who is going to speak today, tells a good story about he likes to cycle, to ride his bike long distances. And so he met people. And so these bicycling groups get together on Saturday mornings. You've probably seen some of them driving down the road, and 40 or 50 or 60 of them will take off together. So there's a lot of opportunity to socialize, and he knew quite a few people. We had a couple of guys in the pit crew who, one landed and the other one came to work at the same company, and they knew each other through a running group that they were in. So they'd go out and run on Saturday mornings. And so it was the same kind of deal, but it was 10 or 15 guys, but they were in the same running group together. And so they managed, through helping each other out, to get a job at the same company. So this is the kind of thing that happens when you're out networking. Another interesting networking story I got to say is Thomas Gilbane, who came to the pit crews in his early 50s and had been quite successful as a product marketing kind of sales and marketing kind of guy in his industry, but wasn't having a lot of success. So he decided he wanted to wanted to sell new homes. So he just went around and visited the offices of some of the new home construction going on. So, the builders will, build a whole neighborhood. And so he dropped in to one of those offices. And who did he meet there? He met the vice president of human resources, who was quite impressed by his initiative to, actually just show up. And so she started helped him with his resume, shepherded him through the process. And I've lost it at the moment, but I'll think of it. He landed at one of the home builders, David Weekley Homes, and it's done quite well. And that's just because he was out, taking the initiative to meet people, go to places where new homes were sold and see what he could learn. A bit of a luck involved there, but there's other stories, and this is the interesting thing about networking. And here's another one. We had a guy who came through the pit crew. This is probably 3 years ago, and how did the story go? He was asking around, just like I said, do you know somebody who works at my target company? And he got a name, and he called that person, and it just so happened that that person was in the same organization that was posting the job that he was interested in. And as a matter of fact, it was a replacement job for someone who'd left, and that person, that name that he got, that he reached out to, was desk was right next to the missing job, the job that had gone vacant. So that's how close he got just by taking the effort. And so these kinds of stories happen all the time. They happened in my sales job as well. And they often told us, if you do the work, good things will happen. And so this is the way networking goes. You do the work, good things will happen. So to continue the story, you're going to meet some people who have a connection with you, want to help you out more than the average person. And so they become more involved in your job search. They remember your conversation, and you may continue to call them up and ask them for advice. You may see them on a regular basis because you guys do something together, but they're now more involved. And so they are a connection or a supporter or a champion. They're trying more than the average person to help you out. And so these people now give you access to the hidden job market because they're thinking about you on a regular basis, thinking about how they can help you. Maybe, when they see a job posting, they wonder if you're interested in. And let's talk about the hidden job market for a little bit here. Let me just look at something. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the hidden job market for just a little bit. And how big is the hidden job market? This was my question. It's been my question for quite some time. And I think the answer is three times as big as the posted job market. And let me just give you a little example of why I've come to that conclusion. Because, you're going to hear some wild numbers, that the posted job market is like only 10% of the total job market. So I'm thinking the posted job market is only 25% of the total job market, and the other 75% is actually hidden. So what does that mean? So some companies do not post their jobs. They are interested in hiring referrals, people they've met, people that are referred by employees, current employees. So they just don't post their job at all. Toyota, when they were ramping up, they had so many people applying for jobs that it locked up their ATS system, which meant it wasn't just a temporary thing. They could not use it to filter out job applicants. It was overwhelmed. And so they put out the word that, if you want to get a job at Toyota, you need to network in. You need to, find someone who knows someone. And they started relying more on their recruiters and their internal employees to recommend people for the job. And so that's how they did it for a while. I don't know how long that lasted exactly, but that's what they fell back on, was because they were trying to fill a lot of jobs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area when they were moving here. So that's another example. And I think the best example that I can think of is the way, from my experience about how we did strategic planning or annual planning. So in September, typically, because it needed to be done by the beginning of October for review by the board of directors, we set about saying, okay, what are we going to do next year? And so there'd be some revenue forecast, and then there'd be some discussions about what projects we wanted to do, and then that would trickle down to what kind of staffing we're going to need for the next year. And so let's say we decided that we were going to hire 10 or 12 engineers for the next year, and then the first quarter is going to be 3, and then we'd see how things are going. And then if things are still going good, then the second quarter we'd hire 3 more, and so on and so forth. As long as the company kept doing well, we were going to hire 12 people next year. So January comes along, maybe the middle of December, and so we post up for those first 3 jobs. Now, it's not just that we're going to hire some people. We think we're going to get some certain people with certain experiences and certain amount of experience and certain amount of knowledge in certain areas. So we strategize that, and we make a plan, a basic business plan on these people we're going to hire. And the first 3 postings would go up end of December, and we try to get those people hired as soon as we could in the first quarter, and so on and so forth. So now you think about that, there's 12 jobs available. 3 of them have been posted. Okay. Now those jobs are not exactly available. They'd be available in the later on in the year, but it's not unusual for companies to find somebody they really like who might fit one of those later jobs, and then go through the process of advancing that position in time so they can go ahead and fill it. Okay, so that's a hidden job market. Now, who knows about those hidden jobs? Some people in the company know about those hidden jobs. Some recruiters might know about those hidden jobs. So that's how I come up mainly with that 3-to-1 ratio. There's a lot of jobs, potential jobs, let's say, planned to be hired, could be hired, not yet open, not yet posted, that are available. And so once you tap into people who know about that, they can give you a heads up that, first of all, that you should just, you should interview for a position. So, and even if that one doesn't work out, there's potential for others that are coming later in the year. And, if you impress them enough, you may even advance it. So you don't have to wait till it gets activated. If you make a good impression with the company, they can activate it early. So that's the hidden job market. Now, let's say you get a name. You get a name of somebody in one of your target companies. And let's talk about target companies first, though, because that's a whole nother topic that I'm not really going to speak about, except this networking with a purpose. The title of my presentation is all about you taking ownership of your job search. And you do that by figuring out where you'd like to go to work. And that's what drives this process of networking, because now you're not just networking on a random basis, you're networking with a purpose. And the purpose is to find people who work in your target companies. And to do that, you have to know what your target companies are. Now, Walt Glass gives a nice presentation as part of the Pit Crew series about how to find target companies and how many you should have. And he's got his own standalone presentation on some of the databases that are available to find target companies. But let me just say, you need to have target companies, because the advantage you get from having a target company and the research that you're going to be able to do against those target companies is going to help you land quicker in a position that's more of a match to you culturally match. Okay, so you've got your target companies, you meet people in the grocery store, you ask them this, in any particular week, you might be working on 5 of your target companies, okay? So you ask them if they know anybody who works at Target Corporation, or do they know anybody who works at Toyota, or to stick with T's. And so they think about that, and maybe they say, no, I don't really. And so you thank them, and you give them your business card or your contact information or whatever, and say, well, if you do think of someone, give me a call. Okay, so let's say you meet somebody and say, yeah, I think I do know someone who works at Toyota. What are you going to do with that? Okay, what are you going to do with that? You're going to do an informational interview. So you're going to go to work and you're going to try to find that person, and you're going to call them up. You're going to reach out to them or call them up. You're probably going to reach out to them by LinkedIn, and you're going to tell them why you're reaching out to them, and you're going to ask them to spend a little bit of time with you, say 15 minutes, and you're going to tell them that you're seeking their advice and feedback about your career. Okay, now, seeking advice and feedback is kind of a key word. And I think you need to think, if someone called you up and said, you came highly recommended to me by Jane Smith, the name of the person who gave you the name, because I was looking for someone who could give me some advice about working in the auto industry. This is Toyota. How would you react to that? Yeah, so asking for help, being a little vulnerable, being complimentary is a really good way to broach the topic of having a conversation about your career. So your goal about informational interviewing with the names you get is to gain information and insight about the company, but also to seek advice and feedback about your career choices, okay? And so you may, if you're already, let's say you're coming from a different industry in particular, right? So you can start asking a lot of just questions about how things are done in their industry and what they like about working at Toyota. One of my favorites, because I was trying to get out of telecom, was to ask them, I tell them a little bit about myself, not too much. You really want to get your contact to your new connection to talk. But I'd give them a little bit about my feedback, and then I'd ask them, do you know anyone in your organization with a background like mine? Or you might say, and then they may say, yeah, I know. And then you'd say, well, what area do they work in? What department? So, with my telecom background, where do you think I would fit best inside your company? And do you know anyone inside your company with a similar background to mine? And so those are the kind of questions that they might be able to answer. And you're not actually asking for a job, but you are asking for advice about if you were to come to work there, where should you focus? And so those are valuable pieces of information. And so you kind of continue the networking process, right? So you've been given a name and now you're asking for additional names. The other part of it is you may, like the example I just gave, you may just happen to hit upon someone who has some need for what you do. Now, it may not be an immediate thing, but they understand what you do. You make a connection with them. You have something in common. Maybe you have a similar background, both in engineering or accounting, or you went to the same college. When you're doing these informational interviews, it's a directed conversation, but you're also throwing in some information, some personal information. And by the way, we're not going to talk about it today, but a biography, which can cover those more personal things about you that you wouldn't include in a resume, is a really good document to use in an informational interview. So instead of applying that, instead of giving the target, so you call them up, you ask them that for 15 minutes to receive some advice and feedback. And so you guys set up a time in a day or two to have a 15-minute conversation. And so ahead of time, you send them your bio. So they have a little bit of background information about you, as opposed to sending them a resume, which just, shouts, I'm looking for a job, okay? And some of you mentioned, and kind of the one rule of informational interviews is you don't ask for a job, because that's why people don't want to talk to you. And this is the way I was too. If someone called me up and I didn't have anything for them, I didn't really feel compelled to talk to them, until I got laid off the first time and I got a little more empathy for people out of work. It was just like, I don't really have anything that I can do to help you. We don't have any openings. And, I was not too inclined to use my time for them. Now, I never had anybody ask. I did have a few people who did ask me for advice and feedback, and we would talk. And I had one guy who called me regularly, once a month. We'd have a little conversation, and he offered up different things he'd learned and read about in the industry. It never turned out to anything. I mean, there was not any really way I could help him out. But I did spend some time with him. And so that's what you're seeking to, is to make a connection with this person, because things can change in the future. So you're looking to gain information and insight, and you're seeking advice and feedback. You can use the bio as a document to talk with, and they get to keep that. And as a reminder of your conversation, of course, you're going to send them a thank you note afterwards, but a reminder of your conversation and what kind of things you're looking for in the questions you asked and what you were curious about. So informational interviews, and you may want to establish maybe 2 or 3 connections or contacts within a company. That's kind of the amount of work I think you should plan to put in. So back kind of closing the loop with target companies, you may have a very long list to begin with. And if you listen to Walt's presentation, some people recommend that you try to put together a list as big as 100 companies. So you can start calling them down, doing your research and doing your informational interviews into 10 or 15 that you wouldn't mind going to work for. So through this process, you're going to meet quite a few people, and get their insights and their directions, and find out where you want to go to work. And so when the time to interview comes along, you're much better prepared and focused, motivated to go to work for one of those target companies. So you've done some informational interviews, you've developed some connections, maybe even some supporters inside companies. There's the hidden job market out there. An application for employment pops up, becomes posted. If you've developed a really good connection, you may even hear from your contact inside the company, your connection inside the company, that the posting is about to arrive. Okay, so you may know in advance that it's coming. And so you got a couple of choices here. You can provide your resume now to your connection inside the company and let them bring it in for you. Okay, so I'll tell you a little story in a minute about employee referrals. A lot of companies require you to apply first, okay, so everybody gets an equal chance, and then your connection inside the company could bring forward your resume. So you just need to ask them, if they want it early, if they want it after the posting has already come out, or if they want it early but they're going to hold it until the posting comes out. There's different, I would say rules. Let's call them rules. Governship. What's the word I'm looking for? Governance. That's what I'm looking for. Different governance rules about the availability of jobs to every potential candidate. So whatever they are, you need to honor those. But you're going to get your connection inside the company, and if you have 2 or 3, you need to pick which one you think is going to, you have the best connection with, is going to do the best job of representing you. And they're likely going to be eager to do this because a lot of times they get a remuneration for this. They'll get paid for, if the candidate goes all the way to being hired, they'll get some money. So they'll put in your name into the HR system as an employee referral. Now, here's what happens when you become a referral. Okay, so there was some good information that came out in an article in Forbes. It was last summer. And so it said, if you just apply on an applicant tracking system, you have about a 2% chance of being called, 1 out of 50. If you get sponsored by an employee referral, and it could even be a recruiter, then you've got a 50% chance of being contacted, 1 out of 2. So in the pit crew, we call that the fast lane. It's like the super, super highway. And the first time I heard this, I was I didn't believe it. And so I talked to a couple of people who had their employment story like this. I was referred by somebody in the company, and I asked them, so you called, so, the employee took in their resume, they got a phone call. I asked them, did that HR person who called you ask any screening questions? And the answer was no. I mean, this one person went directly from employee referral to interview with the hiring manager. So after they were referred, that was the next step, a conversation with the hiring manager, not even a screening interview. So networking, that's what networking does for you. So we're trying to avoid the black hole, and you may be able to. You may still have to apply and then have the connection within the company sponsor you. You can even, and this works as well, you can even call the recruiter and say, I am the perfect person for you. If you believe that, I mean, if that's true, you don't want to contact them if it's not so true. But if it is, then you can make a sales pitch to the recruiter, and if they appreciate that and find value in it, they'll advance you as well. Okay, so it makes it easy for them to find you. And so there's a good story there. We had a biologist who came through the pit crew, and he wanted to work at this particular company in New Jersey. And so they posted up a job that he was interested in, but of course they're in New Jersey, so he hadn't really had any time to do any networking. And so he he got on LinkedIn. He found every recruiter that was at the location, and he sent them all a LinkedIn message, okay, saying, I'm looking for the recruiter who has this posting. I think I have exactly what you need. Now, the recruiter that had the posting did not respond, okay, but one of the other recruiters did and said, oh, you need to talk to, and gave the recruiter's name. And so through that, he was able to contact the recruiter directly, make his pitch. It was all true, and he landed that job, okay, through his networking efforts. So you get referred in, you become a preferred candidate. Let me talk about these numbers for a second. And recruiters. So job posting stats. And so these are for posted jobs, not the hidden job market, but for posted jobs. Even though a job may be posted, about 30% of those postings are filled internally. So if you've been in the job search for a while, you've probably had that experience where they let you know that the post was filled internally. About 40% of jobs are filled by internal recruiters from their first and second connections. Okay, so a first connection is you've had a conversation with the recruiter. When we used to have job fairs, you could go to job fair and you could meet a recruiter, and you might spend 2 or 3 minutes with them, and you'd give them your resume. But a second degree connection is an employee referral. For the recruiter, that's an employee referral. Someone's told them that you're a good candidate. Okay, so there you go. 40% of jobs are through those first and second connections to the recruiter. About 10% of jobs are filled by the internal recruiter using the ATS. So there is some value, and some people get pulled out of the ATS system. But it's 4-to-1 referrals versus ATS applicants. And then another 20% of those jobs are not filled by internal recruiters. they're filled by outside recruiters, which we call agency recruiters. And agency recruiters work similarly. You know, they don't have an ATS, so to speak. So almost all agency recruiter work is their cold calling, you know, their search for you on LinkedIn or referrals. And I used to get called all the time from agency recruiters saying, you know, I'm looking to fill this position. Do you know someone who might be a good candidate? So they network with me to find people that might be a good candidate in some other company. So a lot of positions are filled through relationships. That's the bottom line. And very few positions are filled just by applying online through the ATS. And internal recruiters are good. External recruiters can be good as well. Employee referrals are also good. And you probably have the best chance, I would say, of developing some employee referrals and using those as leverage to get into your target companies. So with all this information you've gained and your backdoor past the ATS system, you become the preferred candidate. The interesting thing here is through your informational interviews and the insight you've gained about the company, because you're going to ask your contact why they enjoyed working there. One of my favorite things to ask was, what did you do before you came to Toyota? And, you know, how did you end up coming to Toyota? Tell me about that story. And then I got to talk to them about, you know, what the situation was, why they changed, how happy they were about it. So asking about what they did before they were at Toyota gives you an avenue to ask a lot of additional questions. And people like talking about this, you know, if it's been successful, and, you know, they're not likely to be forthcoming if it hasn't been successful. But it's a good way to learn more about them. But those kinds of things give you insight for your personal interviews, and you may find out through asking them questions about where you would fit and what they like best about working at the company. You may find out some things that are not generally known. Okay, so they may say, yeah, we've been expanding in our engineering department. The word is, you know, we're going to hire a dozen new engineers next year. And so, you know, that's very helpful to know that they're growing and they're hiring engineers. So there you go. You're more effective in interviewing, and that leads to a successful outcome. You get the checkered flag and get to drive off the left side of the screen. So that's networking with purpose.
Okay, well, we've got some questions here. Charlotte asked earlier, after informational interview, I sent an email, found out it was opened by the assistant, and now sending a handwritten note. Is that too aggressive? He had asked for my resume, which was in the email, but no response since the email's been sent.
Is it too aggressive to send a handwritten note? I don't think so. I mean, I would recommend when you send thank you notes that you write them out by hand, that you scan them or take a picture of them and email them, and then go ahead and mail the thank you note. I think it's, you know, you never know how long it's going to take for that letter to arrive, or even if it did arrive, but you're covering all your bases if you handwrite it, take a picture or scan it. So when they get the email, they see an image of your handwritten note, and then also email the handwritten note. That's a good idea.
Now, when when Charlotte was talking about, he asked for my resume, which was in the email. I would never send a resume unless you've seen a job description, because you want to customize your resume to the job. And if you don't know what the job is, you're sending a generic resume, which may or may not talk about what they need done. So Mark didn't talk about the one-page bio, but I think a one-page bio can be extremely effective, because it whets the appetite and goes, well, here's who you are. If you give me a job description, don't ever just, I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't ever send a resume unless you have a job description or you've had a phone call and you know exactly what they're looking for, so you can tell them how you can help them.
Yeah. Yeah, I missed that part. Yeah, so I finally found the question there. That's exactly right. The one page, yeah, the one page bio is about you. And the nice thing about it is you can include more, personal information than you would include in a resume. But he may have seen your resume and not seen anything there that was interesting, and it disappeared. So Jeff's right. Resume's got to be customized.
So Jason asked, is it bad to mention that their company is in your target list and that you found job listings for them that you're interested in? I guess this is when you're doing reaching out for an informational interview or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't, I'd stay away from job search activities. You can say, I'm interested in your company and, it might be a good place to further my career or something like that. But I wouldn't mention any specific job opportunities unless they ask, unless they ask. And sometimes they will once you get into it. They may say, well, have you looked at our postings? Is there anything there that I could help you with? And then now you have an opening to say, well, yes, there are.
Right.
But they really can't be the reason. I mean, need to have a deeper reason. Something about the company, their mission, their values. It might have been someone who spoke very highly of the company who works there. It's got to be a little deeper than just I'm looking for a job.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to bring that up. Let's see. Michelle says, what is the going amount of rejections you get before the right job comes along?
Well, so here is the interesting thing is people go for months and don't find a job and then land in a week. Okay, because the opportunity appeared. We just had someone, it wasn't a week, it was 2 weeks. Just someone had announced at Jeff's group last week that, it all came together really quickly. And so, luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. So this could happen for you. If it turns out to be one of your target companies, you're so well prepared to answer their questions and explain your motivation and your interest to come to work there that the whole process takes very little amount of time. But you've got to put in the work to get there.
Michelle also asked, are more positions being filled by agencies versus companies directly?
Agencies get about 20% is my statistics. So that means internal in the data that I showed, internal recruiters hired about 50% of the postings. So.
Yeah, so Jason said, so don't bring up the part of the reason for your desires to chat for the job search. Correct. You're always, when you're reaching out to somebody to do an information interview, you're reaching out for advice, information and advice, or advice and I forget the second word that is used. You're looking for advice and you're not looking for, or advice and feedback. There we go. You want to gain insight and information and you're seeking, can we talk? I'm seeking advice and feedback. Those are the key words right there that you want to make sure that you're talking about.
There you go.
Yeah, those two things right there. That's the biggie. And in fact, next week, our speaker is going to talk about informational interviewing. So he'll get into more of, how do you reach out to somebody? What do you do to, how do you reach out and what do you ask and what do you talk about during an informational interview? Any other questions for Mark? What about a recruiter asking for my resume, but with no specific job? I would send a one-page bio. I would have a phone call with them and tell them who you are and give them a bio, high-level document, and just tell them, I don't want to give you a generic resume because it may not, I've done a lot of great things over the last X number of years in my career. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is the best. I want to make sure I give you a resume that is exactly what you're looking for. But here's my bio. Can't tell. Oh, Mark. Okay, I thought you froze there for a second.
Oh, did I?
Maybe not.
It looks like I stopped sharing. So
yeah,
or you took it back.
Yeah, I've got it. So Mark, thank you very much. Do you have more? Or are you done?
Oh, I'm done. I'm done. Yeah.
Okay. Well, wasn't sure. Okay. Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time today. Great information. As Mark said, this is why you network. So hopefully now you've learned some things why you network. And then next week, our speaker is Walt Glass, and he's going to talk about information interviewing. So he's going to help you, take you step by step on how to pick up the phone or how to send an email, what you should say, and how to handle that. So Mark will be with us, Walt will be with us next week. Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 5 days a week now. So networking every Monday, LinkedIn on Tuesday, interviewing on Wednesday, effective resumes on Thursday, and then the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group on Friday, along with Women of Wisdom that meet the first and third Friday of the month. So tomorrow at our LinkedIn presentation at 1 o'clock, how to use LinkedIn for job hunting, strategies to get results. So how to use LinkedIn to find a company or a person. On Wednesday, our interview sessions, our 13-part workshops are done right now. For the month of April, we have 4 different guest speakers who will be joining us. This Wednesday, Jack Bick will be with us to talk about clarity when you need it most. And then we've got 3 other speakers, and then Mark and Walt will be back starting in May for the 13-part series, and hopefully for the last time, and then we'll be getting back together in person after that. On Thursday, our Effective Resume Thursday session, join us for resume tips and tricks. And then this Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we'll be talking about negotiations, what you can negotiate, how to negotiate, just things to be careful of. So Crystal Yates will be with us to talk about negotiations. So this session has been recorded along with most of our sessions. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate it if you do those things. The Career USA YouTube channel looks something like this. Click on playlist. And then at the very bottom, don't click on the video, but click where you see that red arrow where it says view full playlist. And when you do that, up will come a list of all the people in that subject and what their titles were and what they were talking about. So you can go back and see other networking presentations that we've already done or whatever topic you're interested in hearing. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, we put out 6 or 7 emails a week. You can join the Career USA mailing list by sending an email to Career USA, +subscribe@groups.io. And I'll put that email address up here at the very, very end. So please remember, Career DFW, we're just a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. Mark is a volunteer. I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid to do this since 2008. I do this because this is what I do to give back to the community. So we survive on donations. It pays for Zoom. It pays for the web names. It pays for the web hostings and anything that I can't get donated to keep Career DFW going. So please consider making a donation when you get your next job so we can continue to provide the services that we're providing. So thank you very much for joining us today. Mark, thank you once again, and everybody else, hopefully we'll see you later in the week.